National University. My name is Meenal Dikshit. I am Assistant Professor at Jaipur National University, School of Life Sciences. I'll be taking your class on basic introduction on immune system. So before going further, we'll be talking about what is immune system, the basic of immune system, what are the types of immune system. So what is immune system? So it is before going to immune system, we must understand the word immunity. Immunity is an ability of a body to protect against foreign materials which are invading inside our body. Immunity is made up of a word which is in Latin, that is immunis, which is state of protection from infectious disease. It consists of following activities: defense against invading pathogens, removal of worn out cells. Usually if a cell is infected by some viruses or bacteria or other pathogens, then the cells get altered. So that self-altered cells are known as worn out cells, or due to other damages, these cells are known as worn out. These worn out cells are removed by immune system. Then identification and removal of abnormal mutant cells. Mutant cells are those cells in that the anything which is changed due to the problem of mutation. That mutation can be changed, that cells which are mutated can be changed by using immune system. Okay. Then any foreign cells which invade inside the body, for example, during transplantation, any organ which is transplanted, that can also be removed using immune system. Immune system also include allergies and autoimmune disease. Now, what is the meaning of autoimmune disease? When our immune system recognizes our own cells as foreign and it removes or react against our own cells, then it is known as autoimmunity. Now, immunity can be classified by various forms. Immunity can be classified either in innate or acquired. Then again, innate can be specific, non-specific. Then again, non-specific immunity can be special, individual, or racial. Acquired immunity can be active, passive. Again, active and passive can be artificial or natural. Now, this diagram shows that how an immune response occurs in our body. We have 3 layers of immune system. First, whenever an invading pathogen comes inside, our innate immunity is responsible for the first response. Innate immunity, the word innate means which is inborn. This immunity is inborn in every individual. It is a generalized immunity for every pathogen. So this immunity has 2 types: external defense and internal defense. External defense include skin, mucous membrane, and secretions, and internal defense includes phagocytic cells, antimicrobial proteins, inflammatory response, and natural killer cells response. Then again, the acquired immunity is the immunity which is acquired by an individual with time. So when it is the specific immunity, it is attained or acquired. It is also known as adaptive immunity because the individual is adapted to this immunity after the exposure of actual pathogen. So now innate and adaptive immunity, as I've already discussed, can be divided. Can be differentiated. It is a first line of defense. As I told you, innate means inborn. So it is a first line of defense, and adaptive, which is acquired with actual invasion of the pathogen. So it is a second line of defense. Now, it is first line of defense, so it is non-specific. It is not antigen specific. It is immediate response and it has no memory. But adaptive immunity, it has a lag period. Means adaptive immunity requires some time to be activated. Then it is antigen specific and it has a memory. Memory means, for example, a person is infected by a particular bacteria, then due to the immune system, it develops certain antibodies, so that second time when the same pathogen is invading, the immune response is fast. So that is known as memory. So adaptive immune system has always a memory. Now, innate immunity, as I have told you in the previous slide, can be special, racial, or it can be individual. Special means two different species can be affected by a pathogen differently. It can act as for one type of immunity, special immunity, for one species it is pathogenic, but for another species is non-pathogenic. So that is known as special immunity. It can be individual immunity, means for example, if two individuals are there, but one is affected by a pathogen more and another is not affected that much. So that is variation in the innate immunity, that is on the basis of individual. One individual is more affected and another individual is less affected. Then racial, it is racial specific. For example, malaria, many African people, they are not infected by malaria. So that is racial immunity. It varies with the races of humans. So that variation is known as racial immunity. Now, innate immunity, as I have told you, can be external or internal. External include skin. Our entire body is covered by skin. Skin has dermis, epidermis, and sebaceous glands. These sebaceous glands secrete certain amount of acid, due to which the pathogen which are invading, they are not able to invade. Then our mucus layer, which is in the entire alimentary canal, intestine, everywhere, lungs, everywhere we have a mucus layer. That mucus layer has mucus which entraps the pathogen, and the cells of the outline, they have cilia. That cilia helps to entrap that pathogen and remove it from outside. Then our saliva, tears, and urine, they also have certain antimicrobial components which help to remove the pathogen which are invading. So this is the external innate immunity which is present, which helps individual to get protected against pathogen. Now again, anatomical barrier also include chemical barriers. For example, our stomach has gastric acid. Because of that, the pH of the stomach is very low. This low pH helps pathogen or helps the host to remove the pathogen, or the pathogen is not able to live in that acidic condition. Then the lysozyme is present in our tears. That is also helpful to remove the pathogens. Then again, the sweat which is there, that also contains certain antimicrobial agents which remove the pathogen. The anatomical barrier can be biological. Like for example, our own body has normal flora. So that normal flora is present in almost every individual. That normal flora compete with the invading pathogens. So the invading pathogens face a difficulty to invade and to prosper. Now, innate immunity after external defense, as I have told you in the previous slides, we have innate immunity, internal defense and external defense. If any pathogen is getting inside our body, first external defense tries to protect against that pathogen, but still that pathogen, if get inside, then the role comes of internal defense. Internal defense includes some chemical factors like complement proteins, coagulation proteins, and cytokines, and some cells which are WBCs, which help to protect against the pathogens. Cells include monocytes, eosinophils, lymphocytes, neutrophils, basophils. These all cells are phagocytic cells. Phagocytosis means these cells engulf the pathogen and they remove the pathogen by certain chemical reactions. So these white blood cells include B lymphocytes, T lymphocyte, and natural killer cells also. Macrophages, mast cells. Now, this is the process how any phagocytic cell engulfs the pathogen and it removes the pathogen. First, the microbe or any pathogen is internalized by the phagocytic cells and it forms phagolysosome after the fusion of the lysosome. Then in the phagolysosome, there is a secretion of certain chemicals which remove the pathogen, and then the remaining discrete is removed by the cells outside. Monocytes, they are 5% of WBCs. They migrate to the tissues and form specific type of macrophages. For example, when they enter into lung, they form alveolar macrophages. When they enter into bone, they form osteoclasts, and so on. Macrophages are the major phagocytic cells which are responsible for phagocytosis. When neutrophils are present only in blood, so in tissues, the phagocytosis is done by the macrophages. And they are main cells which are responsible for antigen presentation. Now, natural killer cells are again the cells which are responsible or which are involved in innate immunity. Now, these natural killer cells, they do not have any receptors like B cells or T cells, but they are a very important part of the innate immune system. They kill virus and bacteria, infected cells, and they kill cancer cells. Now, what NK cells, how they recognize any cell or any cell is altered or it is a cancer cell by a specific receptor. In normal cells, we have MHC class 1 receptor, which is recognized by natural killer cells. So they do not remove the normal cells. But when an abnormal cell and any transformed cell enter inside, or any pathogen which get inside any of the cell, then the MHC class 1 is removed. So these natural killer cells recognizes those cells which do not have this MHC class 1 and remove these cells. Now, how does they kill these cells? They recognize those cells which do not have MHC class 1 and remove those cells. Now, one more component of innate immunity is toll-like receptors. These toll-like receptors are transmembrane proteins. They are present on macrophages and some other cells. They are conserved across vertebrates. It means they are common. They have similar structure and composition in vertebrates. They are important part of innate immune system. They look for microorganisms which are invading inside the body. They bind to those microorganisms with specific receptors and then they remove these microorganisms. Now, innate immunity, the internal defense system, and which is cellular. The internal defense system can be cellular or it can be made up of certain proteins. So, internal defense cellular includes neutrophils, monocytes, macrophages, natural killer cells, and toll-like receptors. Now, innate immune system, the chemical components include complement proteins, coagulating proteins, and cytokines. What are cytokines? These are small proteins secreted by cells of immune system which can affect the function of any other cell. They are signaling molecules. They are key players of innate immune system and acquired immune system also. These cytokines include interferons, interleukins, and tumor necrosis factor. Interferons, they are secreting proteins and they are mostly the key antiviral proteins. They interfere in the virus replication. They warn the neighboring cells that are virus around. If we did not have interferon, then the influenza virus infection is very common. So these interferons specifically play a very important role in removing the viruses. When the host protein is secreted, that is the interferon, it recognizes certain inactive host protein which are converted into activated proteins, and by a cascade of event, they inhibit the protein synthesis of viral protein. Interleukins. Interleukins are again cytokines which are not stored in the cells, but they are secreted by specific signals. These are responsible, they enhance the proliferation of immune system, they increase the antibody production, they are responsible for inflammation, and they activate the immune cells. Then tumor necrosis factor. Tumor necrosis factor, as the name suggests, it is a tumor necrosis factor which removes the tumor cells. So it is useful in killing this cancer. It also causes inflammation. Then we have complement system. Complement system are again plasma protein, which can be from C1 to C9. These complement system they recognize the microorganisms and they coat themselves on those microorganisms. They are also essential part of innate immune system. They cover the microorganisms, and after a cascade of specific activity, they remove those microorganisms. They facilitate phagocytosis. They direct lyse those cells, and they also cause inflammation. Then coagulation protein. These proteins are responsible for coagulation of blood, which is occurred due to damage in the cells or skin. Now, this slide shows that if invading pathogen escapes external defense, it enters into internal defense. If this external and internal defense also fails, then it goes to acquired immunity. But before going to acquired immunity, one more part which is important is inflammation. All those cells, all those systems, internal defense system and external defense system, both causes inflammation in the body. Inflammation is caused by neutrophils, monocytes, so macrophages, NK cells, toll-like receptors, coagulation proteins, C proteins, cytokines, interferon. So these inflammation can be cellular or it can be extracellular. Inflammation, how the inflammation occurs. First, the normal cells, they get vasodilated. Means the normal capillaries or normal blood vessels, they get dilated, and the capillary permeability is also increased. Due to this chemically permeability which is increased, the normal blood vessels become leaky, and these blood vessels release certain cells. So how the inflammation occurs? When any pathogen invade inside an tissue, then it is responsible for acute inflammatory response. Due to vasodilation and increasing in the permeability, the immune cells, they rush to the site of the invading site of the pathogen, and they get accumulated. Due to this accumulation, inflammation occurs, and due to the dilation of the blood vessels, redness occurs, and neutrophils, macrophages, they move towards the inflammation site by chemotaxis, which results in accumulation of cells and again inflammation. Now this inflammation and innate immunity, initiation of phagocytosis leads to killing of pathogen. It limits the spread of infection. It stimulates adaptive immune response, and it initiates tissue repair. But when both the components, that is internal defense and external defense, fails, then the cells enter or invade the adaptive immune system. The adaptive immune system, as I've already told you, it is very specific. It is specific for every pathogen or antigen. Any part of the pathogen is known as antigen, or which is responsible for the symptoms of the disease is known as antigen. So it is antigen specific. It is not common for all the pathogen, so it is very specific. Then it recognizes non-self. Non-self means anything which is invading inside the body is known as non-self. It responds to the non-self by effector response or by animistic response. And it also remembers non-self. Then acquired immunity can be B cell or T cell mediated. So acquired immunity can be divided into cell mediated immunity or humoral immunity. There are 4 basic properties of specific immunity. They can discriminate between self and non-self. Means they can discriminate any pathogen which is coming outside from in the body, or any cells which are present inside the body. So they can differentiate between the protein which are coming outside due to some pathogens, or which are internal proteins. So they can discriminate between self and non-self. They have diversity. Every pathogen or microorganism, any viruses which are invading, they can be of various type. All these various type of pathogens can be, the immune system responds to all these type of pathogens which are invading. So it has diversity. Specificity, it is very specific to very specific antigen, or specific to the pathogen which is coming. And it has memory. For example, if one is get infected by a particular pathogen, then the immune system responds and it creates a memory. second infection is usually the response by immune system is heightened and fast. So this means it has memory. It remembers every pathogen which has already entered inside the body, and the next time when it enters, the response is much faster. Now, adaptive immune system can also be natural, active immunity, or passive immunity. It can be artificial, active immunity, or passive immunity. Natural means it can be subclinical or clinical infection. Active immunity means actually the organism or individual is infected by the organism, then it is known as active immunity, and it is natural. For example, if we are infected by an influenza virus, so we are actually infected by that virus, then it is known as active immunity, and against that influenza virus our immune system responds. So that is active immunity. Then passive immunity, it is transferred from breast milk from mother to the fetus. Okay, so that is passive immunity. The actual fetus is not exposed to the pathogen, but the preformed antibodies which are present in the mother milk, it is transferred to the fetus. So that is a passive immunity, and it is natural because through natural process, the antibodies which are present in the mother get transferred to the fetus. Then it can be artificial. Artificial vaccination is example of artificial active immunity. The live or attenuated pathogens are directly transferred in form of vaccine, and our body or any individual's body reacts to that invading pathogen, and it creates an immune system or immune response. So that is artificial active immunity. We are not actually infected by organism, but we are infected by live, killed, or purified antigen, which leads to immune response. Then it can be passive immunity. Preformed antibodies which are preformed in another individual can be transferred through passive immunity artificially. For example, you must have heard about plasma therapy. Plasma therapy is example of a passive immunity which is artificial. Now these again, the adaptive immunity can be humoral or cell mediated. Humoral immunity is always B cell mediated, and cellular immunity is always T cell mediated. In this diagram, you can see when any invading pathogen get inside the body, it can initiate humoral response or cell mediated response. In case of humoral response, the B cell, it get activated and it convert into plasma cells and memory cells. The original B cells have specific receptor that are known as B cell receptors. When they are converted into plasma cells, they start secreting antibodies, and those antibodies, they remove the pathogens or antigens which are invaded. But the activity of these plasma cell is through in presence of certain interleukin which are secreted by T cells. T cell mediated immunity is known as cellular immunity or cell mediated immunity. In this, any pathogen is invaded in the cells. When these invading pathogens, the antigen presenting cells engulf those antigens and they present them with class 2 MHC. Class 2 MHC antigen is recognized by Th cells, that is T helper cells. They convert into, they are modified and they start secreting certain cytokines. Those cytokines helps B cells, which I have already mentioned in the humoral immunity, for secreting or converting in that B cells into plasma cells. So B cells are helped by T helper cells. Therefore, those T cells are known as T helper cells. Then those cells which are invaded by these pathogens are known as self-altered cells. These self-altered cells are recognized by TC cells, that is T cytotoxic cells. These cells present the antigen with class 1 MHC, and all nucleated cells can have class 1 MHC. So all self-altered cells can present antigen with class 1 MHC. This class 1 MHC is recognized by TC cells and they convert into cytotoxic T cells which remove those self-altered cells. So both components of adaptive immunity, that is cell-mediated immunity and humoral immunity, are interconnected. Interconnected through T helper cells, because in both, when TC cells remove the self-altered cells, it is initiated by the T helper cells through cytokines, and B cell response or humoral response, in which B cells are converted into plasma cells. That time also the TH cells secrete certain cytokines which help those plasma cells to secrete antibodies. These antibodies can remove those pathogens. Thank you. Now these two diagrams, you can, it's a summary of immune system which I've already talked. First diagram tell you about all the cells which are present: B cell, T cells, NK cells, dendritic cells. For example, we have talked about NK cells. They do not carry any receptor. You can see the NK cell do not have receptors, but T cells and B cells, they have receptors. So you can see there are receptors in those cells. Okay, and the second diagram show how humoral response occur. The plasma cells secrete those antibodies, and those antibodies remove the invading pathogens through antibodies. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.